You are not ignored by coincidence. You are evaluated before you ever speak. The decision happens so quickly it feels invisible. You walk into a room and within seconds people have already placed you somewhere in the hierarchy. There is rarely confrontation, rarely hostility, just quiet categorization. You offer an idea and the room slides past it without friction. The same idea appears later in someone else's voice and suddenly it is valuable. You feel the shift immediately because something inside you knows the truth. Nothing about the idea changed, only the perception of the person delivering it. The same pattern appears everywhere. You enter an interview cautious, trying not to appear arrogant, trying to be agreeable, careful not to occupy too much space. The conversation feels polite but distant. Later, the rejection arrives. You repeat the process again and again. Eventually, you change nothing about your qualifications but alter how you carry yourself. The posture becomes straighter. Your voice slows. Your eye contact remains steady instead of escaping early. Suddenly, the conversation changes tone. Doors open that were closed days earlier. The uncomfortable realization arrives quietly. Your ability did not change. The signal did. This truth irritates people because it appears unfair, yet fairness has little to do with how decisions are made. Human judgment moves quickly. The world decides first and then invents reasons to support that decision afterward. Most people do not fail loudly. They fail quietly. Opportunities do not slam shut with dramatic rejection. They simply never appear. When this happens repeatedly, you begin turning inward. You work harder. You become kinder. You explain yourself more clearly. Every reaction seems logical, yet each one deepens the problem. You are not being overlooked because you lack value. You are being interpreted before that value becomes visible. Once the interpretation forms, every detail is filtered through it. Centuries ago, Machiavelli studied power with ruthless clarity. He stripped away the comforting stories people tell about fairness and character. What he discovered was simple. Influence begins before discussion. Respect appears before arguments begin. Status often forms before evidence has time to speak. Understanding this changes the way you see your position. The goal is not to impress people with louder effort. The goal is to understand what they read before effort becomes visible. The world rewards signals faster than it rewards truth. Once you recognize this mechanism, you stop begging for approval and begin shaping perception deliberately. Many people believe financial struggle disappears the moment money arrives. That belief is comforting but incomplete. Scarcity is not only about numbers. It is also about what people read from your behavior. Poverty reveals itself through signals long before anyone sees a bank account. It appears in posture, in hesitation, in the reflex to soften every sentence before someone else challenges it. A body that moves as if it must apologize for existing communicates something powerful. Eyes that break contact quickly signal uncertainty. A voice that rises at the end of statements suggests permission is being requested. These details do not tell the world you lack resources. They tell the world you lack leverage. And the world reacts quickly to leverage. When leverage appears weak, expectations drop. Offers become smaller. Demands grow larger. You are asked to do more while receiving less because others assume resistance will not come. The signals do not say incapable. They say negotiable. Imagine two people asking a bank for identical loans. The first enters tense and rushed. His words hurry ahead of him. His smile appears eager, almost apologetic. Questions become sharper. Conditions become stricter. Doubt appears in every response. The second enters calmly. Movements are deliberate. His voice suggests options rather than urgency. The financial facts remain identical, yet the conversation unfolds differently. One person communicates need, the other communicates choice. Humans instinctively move toward strength and away from desperation. Need invites either avoidance or exploitation. This explains why waiting to feel confident before acting confident often fails. By the time money arrives, habits of insecurity may already exist in posture and tone. If those signals remain unchanged, opportunities continue flowing elsewhere. Perception directs resources. Resources rarely repair perception. Understanding this removes unnecessary shame. You are not flawed because people misread you. The human brain is designed to make fast judgments. It scans quickly because efficiency matters more than fairness in daily decisions. When something cannot be measured immediately, the brain substitutes visible clues. Discipline cannot be seen instantly. Reliability cannot be measured in seconds. Competence requires time to demonstrate. The brain fills these gaps with signals it can see immediately. Clothing, posture, composure, tone. These become stand-ins for deeper qualities. If someone appears scattered or careless, the brain quietly substitutes those impressions for missing information. Lack of order becomes lack of control. Lack of control becomes risk. The judgment happens before conscious reasoning begins. You do this as well. Everyone does. Once you recognize the pattern, the frustration fades. Instead of fighting the system emotionally, you begin adjusting the signals the system reads. This is not deception, it is alignment with reality. One belief often prevents this adjustment: the idea that ignoring perception is strength. People proudly say they do not care what others think. The statement sounds bold but carries hidden danger. That mindset protects people who already possess authority. Without authority, it invites dismissal. Authenticity operates differently depending on your position. When authority exists, authenticity looks confident because consequences are absorbed by status. Without authority, the same behavior may appear careless or unserious. The relaxed attitude that feels genuine to you may signal indifference to responsibility in the eyes of others. Comfort can easily be mistaken for weakness when leverage is still forming. This does not mean abandoning who you are. It means understanding timing. The privilege of ignoring perception is earned after you control it, not before. At this stage, the question becomes strategic rather than emotional. Were you taught to pursue comfort or respect? Comfort seeks approval. Respect demands clarity. Most people choose comfort without realizing the cost. Changing direction does not require new talent or personality. It begins with correcting small signals that leak power. These signals operate quietly yet shape every interaction long before your words appear. Once you see them clearly, you stop wondering why doors stay closed and begin adjusting what the world reads when you arrive. Change rarely begins with dramatic actions. It begins with quiet corrections that alter how the world reads you before you say a single word. The first correction is simple and almost boring, yet it shifts perception faster than anything complicated. Remove visible disorder from your life. This has nothing to do with luxury, brand names, or expensive possessions. What people read instantly is not price. What they read is control. Clean lines, maintained objects, and orderly surroundings communicate something powerful before your voice enters the conversation. Clean suggests that life is not overwhelming you. Order suggests that you can maintain systems. Intention suggests that your actions are deliberate rather than accidental. When these signals are absent, people fill the silence with assumptions. A wrinkled shirt does not tell the world you lack money. It suggests you lack standards. Shoes that look neglected do not communicate hardship. They communicate indifference to detail. A cracked screen on a device does not appear as bad luck. It appears as tolerance for broken things, and people treat you the way you treat the environment around you. A simple shirt that fits properly and is clean often carries more authority than expensive clothing that looks neglected. One communicates discipline, the other communicates chaos. The same principle spreads everywhere. Someone who repairs small problems quickly, replaces damaged items, and keeps their surroundings organized sends a quiet message. My life is under management. Someone who repeatedly says something still works while leaving it broken sends the opposite signal. Still works becomes the language of surrender. Over time, that language shapes how others negotiate with you. If your signals suggest flexibility toward disorder, people assume you will accept inconvenience easily. They push deadlines toward you. They ask more from you because they sense resistance will be minimal. This rarely happens through malice. It happens through perception. When your environment shows discipline, people assume your thinking carries the same discipline. When the environment appears neglected, they assume your judgment may follow the same pattern. Decision makers rarely investigate deeply at first contact. They scan. When two individuals appear equally capable, the one whose signals look organized becomes easier to justify, easier to trust, easier to defend if something goes wrong. Appearance becomes insurance for the person making the decision. This is why surface discipline is not cosmetic. It is strategic. You are not pretending to be someone else. You are preventing others from assuming you are less capable than you truly are. Once disorder disappears, a second layer begins influencing perception long before your ideas reach the room. Your body speaks constantly even when your mouth is silent. Power is felt physically before it is understood intellectually. People read how you occupy space long before they process the meaning of your words. Movement alone changes how conversations unfold. Watch how someone enters a room when they feel pressured. Their steps hurry forward, their body adjusts repeatedly, their movements look restless. That rhythm communicates urgency. Urgency communicates need. Someone who moves slowly and deliberately sends a different message entirely. Calm movement suggests choice. It suggests the world will adjust rather than force them to chase it. This difference is subtle yet powerful. Speed does not signal efficiency in social environments. Calm signals control. When you walk into a space without visible rush, when you take a second before sitting down, when your gestures remain measured, people feel the difference instantly, even if they cannot explain why. Their behavior shifts slightly. Attention appears. The room acknowledges your presence before you speak. Posture contributes to the same conversation. Collapsed shoulders and downward gaze communicate apology. A body that appears to shrink within its environment suggests that permission is being requested rather than belonging assumed. Strong posture does not require aggression or stiffness. It simply means alignment. Shoulders relaxed but open, spine tall, feet grounded. The message is quiet but unmistakable. I am not preparing to disappear. Eye contact creates another layer of perception. Breaking eye contact quickly signals uncertainty. Letting your gaze wander mid-sentence suggests doubt about your own statement. Holding eye contact calmly for an extra moment reverses the dynamic. The other person becomes aware of themselves. They sense they are also being evaluated. The conversation becomes balanced rather than one-sided. Stillness plays a role here as well. People who move constantly often appear uncertain. Small nervous adjustments broadcast tension. Someone who can remain still without discomfort appears centered. This stillness does not dominate the room. It simply stabilizes it. Another habit quietly weakens presence more than people realize. constant apology. Saying sorry for asking questions, saying sorry for offering opinions, saying sorry for taking time. These apologies feel polite, but they function as submission. They train others to assume that your presence requires permission. When apologies become routine, people unconsciously adjust their expectations downward. When apologies disappear except when truly necessary, something subtle changes. Conversations become more balanced. Others stop assuming fault belongs to you. Physical presence shapes interpretation long before your ideas receive evaluation. Two people may speak identical words yet receive different reactions because one body signals certainty while the other signals hesitation. This is why someone who speaks less often receives more attention. They do not rush to fill silence. They allow pauses to exist without discomfort. The room leans toward them because silence suggests confidence. Most people sabotage themselves by filling every gap with explanation. They talk faster. They add disclaimers. They soften every idea with unnecessary context. By the time the point arrives, its strength has faded. Someone who states an idea clearly and stops speaking creates a different atmosphere. The room processes the statement rather than the speaker's anxiety. Silence becomes weight. When you remove physical signals of urgency, insecurity, and apology, your words gain power without changing content. The room begins treating your presence differently before you even notice the shift. The transformation does not begin inside your thoughts. It begins with the signals your body sends into every room you enter. Once those signals change, the environment around you begins responding in ways that previously felt impossible. The third correction feels strange at first because it asks you to reduce something most people believe creates influence. Words. In social environments, words follow the same rule as currency. When they are everywhere, their value drops. When they are scarce, their weight increases. People who speak constantly often believe they are demonstrating intelligence, openness, or transparency. What they are actually doing is lowering the value of each sentence. When explanations appear before questions, when stories stretch longer than necessary, when every silence is quickly filled with additional commentary, the signal becomes clear. Words are cheap here. Silence produces the opposite effect. Silence creates space, and space forces people to interpret what they do not yet understand. Human minds dislike informational gaps. When a gap appears, the brain fills it automatically with assumptions. Those assumptions often favor whoever appears most composed within the silence. This is why people who speak less frequently often command greater attention. They answer questions directly, then stop. They do not rush to narrate their internal process. They do not soften statements with nervous laughter or endless clarification. Instead, they allow their words to stand. Compare two people explaining the same difficulty. One explains every detail of their stress. They describe long hours, unfair circumstances, and how exhausted they feel. Their intention is honesty. The signal received by others is fragility. Each complaint quietly lowers perceived strength because it tells the room that pressure overwhelms them. When someone presents themselves as overwhelmed, others instinctively reduce expectations. Responsibility moves elsewhere. Now compare someone who describes the same situation with fewer words. When asked how things are going, they respond simply. When discussing a problem, they explain the essential facts and move forward without dramatizing the struggle. Nothing about their situation changed, yet the perception surrounding them becomes different. Others begin assuming competence where little evidence exists, simply because the person revealed less weakness. The mind fills informational gaps carefully. When someone seems calm and controlled, the assumptions usually rise upward. When someone exposes every doubt, the assumptions drop downward. This is why premature transparency often damages leverage. Revealing insecurity too early gives others a map of where pressure can be applied. Negotiations shift immediately. The person who speaks the most usually receives the weakest terms because they already exposed what they cannot afford to lose. Silence is not deception. Silence is timing. You do not lie. You simply refuse to offer information that weakens your position before trust exists. Watch how respected individuals communicate. They pause before answering. They choose words deliberately. They allow silence to remain in the air without rushing to dissolve it. That pause changes everything. People lean forward when they sense a response is being considered carefully. They interpret the pause as thoughtfulness rather than hesitation. Your words appear intentional rather than reactive. Even disagreement sounds different when it is brief. A short statement delivered calmly lands with authority. The same idea wrapped in multiple justifications sounds defensive. Over time, this discipline produces another effect. People realize you cannot be rushed into revealing everything. Emotional pressure loses effectiveness. Manipulation becomes difficult because your limits remain unclear. Opacity creates caution. Predictable people are easy to control. When someone narrates every emotion and every struggle, others quickly learn exactly where their boundaries exist. Those boundaries become tools used against them. Reducing unnecessary speech protects those boundaries. It preserves negotiation power and allows your presence to feel heavier than your words. But perception does not stop at behavior alone. There is another layer many people ignore completely: the context surrounding you. Human beings rarely evaluate individuals in isolation. Instead, they borrow meaning from visible associations. This cognitive shortcut allows the brain to make fast decisions without analyzing every detail. Traits spread through proximity: competence, ambition, discipline, laziness, distraction. These characteristics travel across groups silently. One meeting, one photograph, one public association can raise or lower perceived credibility without you saying anything. This phenomenon is known as the halo effect. People assume shared qualities between individuals who appear connected. If the group appears focused and driven, that seriousness extends to you automatically. If the group appears chaotic or stagnant, the same label attaches itself quietly. This does not require abandoning old friendships or rejecting your past. Loyalty is not the issue. Confusion of context is. Different rooms serve different purposes. Strategic conversations belong in environments where strategy exists. Emotional processing belongs in spaces built for emotional support. Mixing these environments carelessly dilutes perception. Consider two versions of the same person. On one night, he spends hours with friends who complain endlessly about circumstances they refuse to change. Every conversation circles the same frustrations. Ambition becomes a joke. The next evening, he sits in a room where discussion revolves around decisions, plans, and leverage. The person remains the same, yet the atmosphere surrounding him changes how others interpret his presence. Posture shifts slightly, speech slows, attention appears. Nothing mystical occurred, the context changed. Successful individuals often appear selective about environments for this reason. They understand that credibility spreads through proximity. When you are seen beside people building something meaningful, their seriousness reflects on you. When you are consistently seen beside people drifting without direction, that drift begins to define your image as well. This does not require dramatic separation. It requires awareness. Different circles serve different roles. Social loyalty does not mean every environment deserves equal exposure to your ambitions. You protect certain conversations from casual influence. You allow supportive relationships to remain supportive without allowing them to define your future direction. Deliberate separation of context sends another signal entirely. It communicates intention. Powerful individuals rarely allow environments to choose them randomly. They choose environments that reinforce the version of themselves they are building. Once this happens consistently, perception changes without explanation. People begin reacting to you differently, not because your personality transformed overnight, but because the signals traveling ahead of you changed. The pattern becomes clear. Transformation rarely begins with confidence. Confidence follows behavior. Most people wait until they feel powerful before changing how they move, speak, or choose environments. That waiting traps them. The sequence actually works in reverse. The body changes first. Words become fewer first. Context shifts first. Then the mind catches up. When you behave as if your presence matters, the world often responds before you fully believe it yourself. Conversations slow. Interruptions decrease. Negotiations feel different. Those reactions become evidence. Evidence reshapes identity. Eventually, something irreversible happens. You stop apologizing unnecessarily. You leave bad deals faster. You speak without the urge to justify your existence. This is not arrogance. It is alignment between behavior and perception. The old pattern involved reacting to how the world misread you. The new pattern establishes conditions before others interpret you at all. From that moment forward, the choice becomes clear. Continue allowing the world to assign meaning to you automatically, or deliberately shape the signals that define your presence. The world will judge either way. Control of the signal determines the verdict.